All right, we're going to start by looking at graphs for categorical variables, but before we can do that, we need to define what the distribution of a categorical variable is. So in general, the distribution of a variable tells us what values that variable can take on. So if I asked, what's your eye color? You could say green, brown, blue, right? There's a lot of different choices there. So those would be the values, and then how often it takes those values on. So I have an example here with people's favorite food. They were given 4 choices: hamburgers, tacos, pizza, or vegetarian. The second column here tells you how many people voted for that as their favorite food out of the 50 people I surveyed. And then I took and found the percentage. So if 10 people said hamburgers were their favorite, 10 out of 50 gives me 20%. So those percentages should add up to 100% to represent the whole of your group. And the distribution of a categorical variable, if you're asked to do that, you would want to list the categories that people were allowed to choose from. So here I just had the 4. And then you give either the count, so the number of people that selected that, or the percentage of people who selected that or fall into that category. All right, so let's take a look at an example of a categorical graph. This first one we're going to look at is a bar chart. So bar charts are only for categorical variables. And we have 2 examples here. I have one that shows revenue, so how much money is made. And then the other one is oil reserves. Okay, so description says rectangular bars with lengths proportional to the count or percentage they represent. So the smaller the bar, the smaller the amount that's in that category. Taller the bar, the greater the amount that's in that category. These are really nice. They show the counts for each category next to each other, so you can compare them visually rather than just reading the numbers and thinking about them. And then the one thing to note about categorical graphs is they do have a space in between each of the bars. So as categories are distinct things, and so we show their distinctness by putting a space between them. Now, depending on the purpose of the graph, you can actually take a bar chart and reorder those bars in order. So you could go from tallest to shortest or shortest to tallest, but it just depends on what your purpose is. So here, this one with the oil reserves, you're looking at who has the most oil in reserve in terms of country. And so they put the countries with the most first and the countries with the least at the end. Okay, they didn't do that with the revenue chart because they're looking at how much money was made in March, April, May, June, and July. And so those have a natural order to them. So they just left them in the order that we would naturally think of how the months fall in a year.